Well, joining us live now from our Westminster studio is Persson, who's the director of the EU reform think tank, Open Europe. Whichever way you look at it then, Mr. Persson, Mr. Osborne is right that we will only be paying half of that rebate.
Well, I think Osborne is right to say that Britain will only pay £850 million. The big question is whether this was always going to be the case, or whether he secured something new, a fresh concession today. And that, I think, I think there's plenty of disagreement at the moment, and a lot of this relates to a very complicated thing known as the UK's rebate from the EU budget, which something which very few people actually understand, but basically means that Britain gets back a little bit of what it contributes to the EU in certain circumstances, and what some people claim is that the rebate was always going to apply to this original bill, and therefore that what Osborne has achieved today is not so much a victory as something that would have happened anyway.
OK, so if this rebate was always going to happen and was inevitable, is it the amount that he has secured then that is the victory?
Well, he's actually secured two things, for sure. One is, as we heard earlier, a delay in the actual payment, so he does not have to pay it now on December the 1st, which was originally the case. He can now pay it at some point next year. That's the first thing. And secondly, he secured that the interest that was originally going to be paid on this amount won't now be incurred. So those two things he definitely has secured. Whether he's actually secured that halving that we're talking about, or that we hear about now, is subject to discussion. But the 850 million amount is what Britain will pay, that's for sure. But the question is whether that was always going to be the case.
And confusingly, the EU will still get the £1.7 billion.
Well, that is a matter of sequencing of the payment, whether Osborne or the UK first pay the £1.7 billion and then get some back. I think that is less important as to the final, compared to the final amount. But I've heard some discussions about that as well. So, but the bottom line is that the amount is £850 million. And of course, people will always have different views on this, and the EU budget is so confusing that everyone can claim victory or loss depending on who you talk to. So, if you're looking for a straightforward explanation today, you won't get one, and this discussion about who's right is going to run and run. And
will Italy and the Netherlands will also be celebrating this evening, or have we received special treatment?
That's a different matter entirely. I mean, both Italy and the Netherlands were on the hook for extra cash as part of this revision that led to this situation in the first place. But in a very complicated way, both the Netherlands and Italy are paying towards the UK rebate. So whenever Britain gets money back, they have to pay in more. So I very much doubt that we'll see much celebration out of those two countries tonight.
OK, and just lastly, changes for the future. Do you think that's inevitable then, given this row over all of the money and how it's going to be paid and who's going to pay what?
Well, this, in many ways, is a kind of a minor issue if you think about it. Yes, the amount is very annoying, but the EU budget involves something like 140 billion euros every year. The key question is how we spend this money, and I think the UK government should spend a bit more energy on reforming the substance of the EU budget and get more value for taxpayers' cash in terms of what the money is actually spent on, rather than getting into situations like this. So I hope that in future Britain will be getting a bit earlier and negotiate on substance rather than being engaged in the type of firefighting that we've seen today.
Yeah, certainly demonstrated how confusing it all is. Thank you very much, Persson, from the EU reform think tank Open Europe. We appreciate your time.